President Trump is extending his deadline for Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz for 10 more days before he then orders strikes on the country's power plants. He said today that talks are going quite, quote, very well. Despite that, thousands of U.S. troops are expected to arrive in the region as soon as Friday, with even more set to deploy soon. The move is further fueling speculation about whether or not President Trump will order boots on the ground in Iran. CBS News national security analyst and Marine veteran Aaron MacLean joins me now. He's also host of the School of War podcast. Aaron, good to see you. Let's start with talking about those troops. What are they going to be doing there?
Well, you have three groups of extremely well-trained elite American ground forces reported to be moving into the region right now. There's two Marine expeditionary units, the first of which is arriving in the area essentially as we speak, the second of which is a few weeks behind, coming from the west coast of the continental United States. And then, of course, there's the 82nd Airborne coming into the region by air, also more or less as we speak. These groups are highly capable of conducting limited boots on the ground operations. The number of the troops, their capabilities, this is not on the scale of, say, for example, a 2003 invasion of Iraq. You would be looking at building the possibility of certain limited operations. And I'd say there's three basic possibilities. One would be action in the Strait of Hormuz itself, in some way tied to the question of reopening that body of water. A second bucket would be something targeting Iran's energy output, seeking to get control over the revenue coming into Iran. The main target getting talked about there is a place called Karg Island. It's a little bit further northwest in the Persian Gulf. And then the third option would be, this would be for the 82nd Airborne in particular, participating in some kind of special operations raid targeting Iran's nuclear program.
You, Aaron, about the president's deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Obviously, that's now become a huge part of this war. So what do you make of him pushing that deadline back from a strategy perspective? Does this tell us anything about where those negotiations actually stand?
Maybe. I think there's some layers here. The first layer, you could say the president has asserted that the Iranians asked for this. You could conclude from that the talks are productive and both parties hope to arrive at some formula that's mutually acceptable to both sides. It's certainly possible. It's impossible to confirm, at least from the information that we have right now. But I'd add a couple of points to that. The first is that this is not a ceasefire. The president has not offered a ceasefire. The president essentially has said he's not going to escalate to these strikes on power plants in Iran and run the risks of Iranian retaliation and the effects that would have on the markets. So the bombing campaign, the U.S.-Israeli joint bombing campaign, continues throughout this new extended 10-day period, which means they continue to prosecute all the kinds of missile targets, the nuclear targets, the naval targets, targets around the Strait of Hormuz that they feel they need to prosecute. And then the other layer I would identify here is it's building time for potential ground operations. So there's a lot potentially packed into this pause here.
All right, Aaron MacLean, thank you.
Thank you.